Hello, hi, and howdy to the Crimson Invaders and the White Phantom Saviors. And I guess the weird purple dudes from Dark Souls 3 are welcome too. Welcome back to Where Are We Now, the digital exploration series that is not a front for money laundering. Not at all. In this episode, we're heading back to Dark Souls to take some more baby steps through the feeble and decaying land of Lordran. As we've seen in the last couple of episodes, the levels of Dark Souls are absolutely lousy with fuel for speculation. Fuel that we're gonna frack for today. There's so many tiny environmental details, most of which I've never stopped to think about in my 24 or so playthroughs of this game. Until today. For anyone who's tuning in for the first time, I'd like to briefly say that this is not a lore video. If you want lore, you're better off checking out Hawkshaw, the Firelink Conspiracy, or Smotown. Those are all great channels for that. We'll talk about Dark Souls lore a little bit, but for the most part, we're just concerned with soaking in those sweet, sweet FromSoft environments. So sit back, grab some eats, and warm your seats, because it's time to take another agonizingly slow walk through the world of Dark Souls. As always, a lightning fast thanks to my Patreon supporters, who all have fantastic credit scores and are super nonchalant about it. Check the link in the description to learn how you can support the channel for as little as $3 a month. Alright, roll the intro cinematic. I'm so excited. In the last Dark Souls installment of Where Are We Now, we explored the infamous subterranean stretch from the depths all the way down to Ash Lake, which included ringing the second Bell of Awakening. Now that the path to Sen's Fortress is opened, I figured this would be a good spot to continue from. It's really nice to be back above ground again, even if there are more affronts to sunlight just beyond those iron gates at the far end of the bridge. Before we head inside, though, I'd like to briefly investigate the 3-story structure that Andre has set up his smithy in. It seems to be a small chapel, judging by the lectern on the top floor, but it's actively falling apart. The roof is caved in, the walls aren't far behind it, and I'm sure having this bonfire lit right here on this wooden floor is going to be a key contributor to the structural carnage pretty soon. The increased levels of decay here compared to the much larger and more extravagant Church of the Undead Parish means that this building is likely much older. Maybe it was once a way station where undead warriors could rest, replenish, and worship before having their dreams crushed in Sen's Fortress. I can totally picture this big basement being some sort of common room, with rows of bunk beds and dining tables set up. This many decades or centuries later, still no undead has fulfilled the prophecy, no undead has defeated Ornstein and Smo, nobody has passed go or collected $200, so here the chapel sits, lonesome and forgotten. Man, I guess that theory sheds Andre in a new light. He's just been sitting here, hammering away at that S-stock for several lifetimes. It's no wonder he's so jacked. They should have modeled him with his right arm way bigger than the left one. I see why they didn't do that, though. Nobody would be able to take him seriously. Alright, onto the fortress proper. I've always thought that the walk up to the entrance here was beautiful. With the trees on either side, the leaves drifting through the air, the sun beating down against the broad stone walls up above. It's kinda like something out of Shadow of the Colossus, if you've played that before. Once you set foot inside the threshold of Sen's Fortress, the first thing that happens is this pressure plate triggers an arrow trap. It's the fortress letting you know up front that you're not in Weenie Hut Juniors anymore. Just a few steps deeper into the dark interior, you come face to face with the main enemy of the area, the man-serpents. Look at these guys. I love them. They seem kinda corny now compared to current FromSoft enemy design, but I've got a soft spot for them. I might be alone in this, but I think this is my first time noticing that their little snake tongues flick out every so often to taste the air. Probably tastes like metal and mothballs. I bet they have to help each other put on their cute little necklaces in the morning. I don't think their arms are long enough to do it themselves. Oh, here we go. The main chamber. The lower levels of Sen's Fortress are jam-packed with variations on this same trap. A narrow walkway with heavy blades swinging back and forth. If you're lucky, it'll just kill you. If you're not lucky, you're getting knocked down into the bottom levels where you'll have to deal with a bunch of Titanite demons and muck that limits your movement speed. I don't play this game online anymore because the netcode is a joke, but I remember invasions here in Sen's Fortress being pure chaotic fun. There's a ton of spots where you can drop down onto people unexpectedly or lure them into the comedically oversized swinging axes. Huh. I wonder how these things manage to stay in perpetual motion. I don't think there's room in that housing for the necessary mechanism to keep it turning. Maybe they're just super well oiled and once a month or so the man-serpents have to use a long stick or whatever to get them swinging again. Why is this weapon called a scythe? It's a bardiche. This bothers me greatly. If you are one of the unfortunate souls who happens to get knocked down to the lowest level, but you manage to claw your way back out anyways, you'll get rewarded with a couple of ladders that lead you up to this section of the roof. This is the giant that you see pulling on chains to open the gate after you ring both of the bells of awakening. Honestly, not the worst gig in Lordran. The fresh air and view is a lot more than the man-serpents have, and it's probably really good fun to squash the odd warrior that wanders up here underneath his enormous dogs. I've always wondered about the statues of the Silver Knights that dot this place. There are two placed at the entrance into the main chamber on either side of the corridor. They both have hands outstretched with palms turned upwards. The purpose behind these statues is open to interpretation, so why don't we interpret? The pose that the statues are set in is welcoming, beckoning even. These ones down here seem to be set in their proper place, neatly flanking the path and guiding warriors to the next section of the trial. And then later on, we encounter more of the same statues, only these ones are tucked away into some dusty side room, shoved unceremoniously into the corners to be forgotten, like the latest soulless Corpo Slop Overwatch imitation. My best guess is that at some point these statues were placed strategically throughout the fortress as guideposts, a breadcrumb trail for the undead warriors attempting to follow Gwyn's path. From a theistic standpoint, that makes the most sense to me, since the Silver Knights were servants of Lord Gwyn. They would have been beacons of loyalty and virtue to anyone seeking to follow in the Lord of Sunlight's footsteps. With the world falling into ruin and the prophecy of the chosen undead fading from culture and memory as people go hollow, most of the stone sentries of Sen's Fortress sit crumbling in dark corners, their original purpose forgotten, much like the ambitions of the gods themselves. Out along the cliffside wall, the path of the fortress goes round the outside. Is this not the most Looney Tunes-ass trap you've seen in a dark fantasy setting? Just chasing people back down the path with heavy objects, Donkey Kong style? I guess the thinking is that if you can dodge a boulder, you can dodge a sword, but it's still goofy. I can think of a number of other ways to test someone's agility. As far as I can tell, the machinery that launches the boulders is automatic to a degree, which we'll see more of soon. It's just hucking nonstop boulder after boulder down this path into this dark pit. Where does this lead, anyway? If you listen closely, you can hear a distant impact and what sounds like it might be the crunching of several trees being crushed under the immense weight of the rock. They're probably landing somewhere down in Darkroot Garden. It would have been really funny if there was a spot later on where you could find a mountain of these boulders just sitting there off in the distance. That would be great continuity. And speaking of continuity, I'm tickled by this small section down at the bottom of the boulder path. If you just sit here, the boulders will keep coming and stacking up in this chute. Once it's full, the next boulder to come down will smash through this wall, which allows you to come in here and collect the gold serpent ring. The funny part is, that's the only way to access this room. There's no doorway anywhere. This room exists only to be smashed into. There's even a downward slope in the back so the boulders roll out, so it's like they must have thought about it and designed it this way on purpose. They were hoping someone would stack the boulders up in that chute. I guess if any spot in the game is going to be like this, it makes sense that it's Sen's Fortress. Up here is the main mechanism that sends the boulders down their paths. You can turn the thingy in the center yourself to control the direction, but when you're on the lower levels, you can hear it being turned all on its own to target you. But once you get up here, there's nobody around. I always thought that was kind of spooky. Makes it feel like the fortress is haunted. And let's be honest, it probably would be. Anyways, if you make boulders fall down this way to break through another wall, you'll find Big Hat Logan imprisoned in one of the hanging cages. These things are weird. Some of them act as elevators, but most of them are just cages. According to the cage key item description, the man-serpents will sometimes stuff warriors attempting to overcome the fortress into these cages, and either let them rot or drag them off to, and I quote, who knows where. I think the subtle lore cues elsewhere in the game imply that this who knows where location is actually the Duke's archives at the top of the mountain. It's pretty easy to conclude that the man-serpents were created by Seath to be his henchmen. The Duke's archives, Seath's main site of experimentation, is the only other place where you encounter them in the game, and they're found guarding the prison cells containing Seath's subjects. The item description of that gold serpent ring we just found starts with, "The serpent is an imperfect dragon." You know who else is an imperfect dragon? Do I even have to say it? So yeah, if they're working for Seath, then the adventurers they imprison here in these hanging cages are more than likely taken up to the Duke's archives to be used as subjects for the wacky mad scientist shit that goes on up there. I think I speak for all of us when I say that I get it. It's hard to find good test subjects these days. So much red tape. We're up on the roof now, and I have to wonder what the spikes along the outer walls are achieving. I don't think they would stop a determined person from scaling up the side of the fortress. The gaps in between them are too big. Hell, if they're sturdy enough, they'll make for decent handholds to pull yourself up with. I guess there's something to be said for intimidation factor. We do get some nice views from up here, too. Wow, look at that vista. You know, I've always wondered what it would be like to visit the other sections of Lordran, to see what's going on within the different stone rings. I would expect there to be towns that are very similar to Undead Burg, but I guess we'll never know for sure. And here is the source of the rolling boulders. Yep, it's just a big guy dropping them down there non-stop for hours on end. He's not chained up, he could leave if he wanted to. I think he just really loves dropping rocks on fools. Am I crazy, or does it feel wrong being over here? I feel like I've been over here next to him in this specific spot like twice in all my years of playing. It's just not really worth it coming over here. The top level of this tower is only accessible if you take the bridge from the center tower. This is just above where you encounter that undead prince, so why isn't there stairs or a ladder that leads up from down there? I'm willing to let a lot of architectural weirdness fly since it's Sen's Fortress and the in-universe explanation of it being a trial means that it can be really video gamey. But I mean, there's a table and chairs here. What trial could that be related to? A trial of table manners? Maybe the man-serpents just brought this furniture up here so they could have a place to play Snake Solitaire or Snake Texas Hold'em on their lunch breaks. The in-game use of this room is to summon Iron Tarkus, though. It just wouldn't be a video on Sen's Fortress if we didn't summon this brute and watch him solo the boss from the sidelines. It's just that easy, folks. Now that the Iron Golem is gone, let's take a closer look at his arena, because I've always found it to be one of the more interesting ones. For starters, it looks like there used to be support pillars around the perimeter, as well as some sort of structure in the center, both of which have been eroded to almost nothing over the years of battle this place has seen. These mean that there very well could have been a roof over this arena at one point. That's weird to imagine, right? We also have these 6 extremely tall pillars flanking either side of the platform. Each of them has a gargoyle statue perched on it, observing the battlefield. Weirdly enough, I haven't seen people talk about these much. The textures don't really match the surroundings at all. They're from a completely different color palette as far as I can tell. There's also the fact that if you use binoculars and zoom in, you can see a very clear hole in each of their mouths, which in video game language suggests that these things are meant to shoot projectiles at the player during the boss fight. It's just weird, man. It's like they were cut and pasted here from a different area to make the fight more interesting, but they don't even do anything during the fight. They just sit there. Maybe it didn't play well during playtests, or they were just too buggy and there wasn't enough time to fix them before the game shipped. That's the case with a lot of these mystery, unresolved features. Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I remember playing through a mod of this game that restores these statues and makes them shoot lightning or something. Maybe it was Daughters of Ash? I don't remember. I've played this game front to back so many times that individual playthroughs completely blend together. If anyone knows what mod that was or what the deal with these statues is, feel free to leave me a comment. The last drop of speculation fuel I want to bring up here is the blocked off path at the back of the arena. It's a massive passageway. Given its recessed position in the side of the mountain, it clearly led into Anor Londo at one point, or at the very least, whatever lies right beneath Anor Londo. Lore-wise, I like to think that it was collapsed purposefully by the gods or the servants of the gods to prevent the undead plague from seeping into their precious golden city. Or hey, maybe they collapsed it as an added layer of security in case the chosen undead turns out to be running a whip build. You don't want that kind of weirdo succeeding Lord Gwyn. I'm kidding. You guys, whip users aren't even real. There's nothing to be afraid of. Thinking about it from a non-diegetic perspective, though, I wonder if there was plans to have another level in between Sen's Fortress and Anor Londo here. It really wouldn't surprise me. The interaction with the player being carried up to the city by the pale demons always seems strange and out of place to me. Sure, they cemented it as a thing that just happens in Dark Souls 3, but it's still odd. If there was meant to be a level that would see the player ascending up through the underbelly of Anor Londo, I like to think it would be something like the Heart of the Mountain area from the 2018 God of War game. Similar to what we already had with Blighttown, but with some new tricks up its sleeve. I don't know, I'm not a game designer. It's crazy to imagine an alternate universe where the dev team had another year or two to really flesh out the game, because I know they had a ton of stuff planned that they didn't get to. But if Dark Souls 1 is already this good, I shudder to think of how far this game would shift my standards if it had even more time in the oven. That said, I think it's time to summon the Sunscreen Squad and be carried up to one of the most majestic-looking areas in all of Souls. Maybe all of gaming, too. The City of the Gods, Anor Londo. Look at it. Would you just look at it? Even this many years later, Anor Londo is absolutely stunning. Its complex, Baroque skyline is swathed in golden sunlight as the pointed tops of towers revel in communion with the clouds. This is our reward for swashbuckling and boondoggling through Sen's Fortress. This view. I think it's worth it. The moment you start the descent into the city, it becomes pretty clear that this place is built by the gods for the gods. These doorways are massive, man. They're big even for the giants that are standing guard. We've got engravings in the stone pretty much everywhere. Gods love shit like that. And we've also got statues of the fabled Knights of Gwyn on either side of this courtyard. Well, Ornstein is a Knight of Gwyn. Smo is just some big prick as far as I know. And you can tell that he got to pick what pose his statue took, because you cannot convince me that he can hold a squat that deep for any longer than a second. This is definitely a projection of insecurity. Check out this lift. No guardrails, no lever controls. It's just pure uppy-downy. That's just an accident waiting to happen. I really appreciate the detail of the corkscrew mechanism at the bottom, though. It lends some physicality to what is otherwise a slightly immersion-breaking video game-ass elevator. This bridge. I'm going to take this opportunity to get something off my chest here. When I first played this game, I got stuck right here for what felt like forever. I just had no idea where I had to go. I must have jumped off, left to explore other areas, and then returned here only to jump off again a dozen times. I could have looked it up, but 19 is a stubborn age. Nowadays, if it takes me longer than 10 minutes to figure something out in a game, I'll just crack open Google, no problem. But I refused to use a walkthrough back then because I guess I thought it made me less of a gamer? How stupid was I? And I was playing offline too, so I didn't have messages or phantoms to guide me. Of course, now I know that the game wants you to walk up this flying buttress, but on my first playthrough, I want to say it took me upwards of an hour of going back and forth before I finally figured it out. It's not even a puzzle, it's just where you have to go. I have to come to teenaged me's defense here, though. This kind of is clunky level design. It isn't exactly jumping out at you. And by this point, the entire game has trained you absolutely not to jump down onto anything that doesn't look like perfectly flat and walkable ground. I still think that it's goofy that this is the main progression route, but hey, at least it isn't splotched all over with yellow paint. Looking at you, Resident Evil 4 Remake. Once you reach the top of the buttress and drop down, you can see that someone has busted through the glass in classic Kool-Aid Man style. Before we head inside, though, it's time to talk about the fact that Gwyn might be absolutely enamored with bread. This is something that caught my eye here for the very first time just now. These engravings on either side of the window. Actually, the same engraving is repeated all around the outside of the wall of this structure. It depicts the three-stage process of making bread, framed gracefully by swirling stalks of wheat or barley. At the top, we see a person hunched over a table, hard at work. Then we have a blazing oven in the center, and finally, at the bottom, a basket of prepared loaves of bread. This is interesting. You'd expect a city of gods to sort of look down on lowly bread-making commoners, or to see the process of baking as meager compared to what they're capable of, but here it is, etched into the stone walls of this grand cathedral in quite a respectful mural. Gwyn must love bread. I bet he's a sourdough guy. He looks the part. That might be reading into it a little too much, though. Dark Souls texture artists have a habit of just grabbing stuff that looks appropriate at a glance and throwing it on a mesh. I mean, Dark Souls 2 has a goddamn Heineken label in it. Remember that? They tried to make us forget by fixing it in Scholar of the First Sin, but I remember. Inside the cathedral, we're greeted by some sheet ghosts. I really appreciate that they've thought to add some echo here, but let's be totally honest. The reverb in this space would be way more intense. Through the magic of editing, I can make it more realistic. Check this out. Ah, I can see why they didn't go with that. That would give me a headache after the first minute or so. Once we're down at the bottom, we get a good view of the biggest framed painting I've seen in my life. And that's including other games and movies and stuff. Seriously, this thing is massive. It's gotta be at least, 4 stories tall? Everything's bigger in Anor Londo. It's like Lordran's Texas. I am noticing now that it's not even attached to the wall with anything. You'd expect some big chains or something hoisting it up, but no. It just leans like that naturally. Over here in the corner is the corpse of our friend Tarkus. The commonly accepted theory is that because he's heavy and unbalanced, he must have fallen to his death from the rafters above. I've been more than happy to accept that idea in the past, but his body is tucked away into the corner here. He couldn't have fallen like this. Assuming the painting guardians didn't bother to move his body, because they probably wouldn't, his placement here means that gravity didn't kill him. More likely he was badly injured by the fall and overwhelmed by the dozen or so dex builds bearing down on him to protect their painted world. Rip Bozo, that's what you get for fat rolling. It's definitely been said a million times before, but I think it bears repeating. This turntable thingy in the middle of Anor Londo is really damn strange. It seems really inconvenient to block off access to certain areas just to access other ones. I wonder what the thinking was there. If Gwyn was a genie and I could ask him 3 questions before we duke it out at the end of the game, one of those questions would definitely be about this. It's become somewhat iconic, though. They're always playing with verticality in weird ways, these FromSoft guys. I can make any number of jokes or witty remarks on why they would design something like this from an urban planning perspective, but the truth of the matter is, I respect the hell out of a video game that isn't afraid to feel like a video game. It's like a spectrum, and Dark Souls is certainly closer to the valuing gameplay over immersion side of it. For example, over on the opposite side of Dark Souls is Red Dead Redemption 2. It is one of my favorite games of all time, but goddamn if they didn't make Arthur control like a Dodge Neon in a snowstorm. If you turn the mechanism on the turntable to access the lowest level of the cathedral, you can access an area called Dark Moon Tomb. There are gravestones dotting the perimeter of the room, accompanied by 100 or so statuettes of silver knights standing at attention. This must be a tomb for only the most respected and loyal knights in Gwyn's ranks. The big man himself stands there in the center, decked out in golden ornamentation. What a sick character design, man. And it must be a case of asset reuse, but I find it amusing to think that they chiseled this statue of Gwyn and chose to make him look like the hollow that he eventually withered into, instead of depicting him in his prime like in the intro cinematic. I bet he'd be steamed about that. The last thing the statue chiseler ever saw was probably a lightning bolt coming out of Gwyn's finger. Or his big toe. I mean, there's gotta be a reason for him wearing open-toed shoes. Unfortunately, the front doors to the main cathedral are locked by some contraption, so we have to take a pretty big detour to get there. The beginning of said detour takes us past some of the demons that helped us get here. The design of these guys is gnarly. They're one of my favorite monsters in the game. They have ears that extrude outwards into discolored antennae. It probably hurts them a lot if you tug on them. They've also got triple jointed back legs. That's pretty impressive. It looks really awkward from the back though. The exposed brain has always reminded me of the Lickers from the Resident Evil series. And who could forget the famous Anor Londo archers, who shoot arrows the size of umbrellas at you to halt your advance. Not at me though. I DoorDash for these guys sometimes, so they know I'm chill. Is it crazy to say that I think these two archers have killed more players than most bosses in the game? I'd be very interested in seeing those stats. It's too bad all we have in that regard is general consensus and lieutenant opinion. In Dark Souls 2, you can interact with that altar in Majula to see the number of deaths worldwide. I, for one, would love to see that mechanic brought back and revamped to allow us to see how many player kills individual enemies have. Maybe as a spell you cast? I don't know, but that would be fascinating to look at. It wouldn't be completely accurate since there are players who prefer to play offline, but it would give you a good idea. If FromSoft uses this idea for their next game, I want 1%. No, 1.5% of international sales revenue. I can't believe I haven't noticed this before, but you can actually see the next bonfire through these windows if you look down. I guess that's probably because it's always a mad dash up here to kill these archers before they knock you off the edge. It's not the only time they use the old look through a window to see where you can go next trick in Anor Londo, as we'll see in a minute. This floor could do with a good sweep, don't you think? Other than that, it's pretty tidy in here. It kinda reminds me of an old library I used to go to when I was a kid. They had normally sized doorknobs there, though. I'm not sure which yaoi artist designed these. They're nearly the size of my head. Other than that, the furnishings here seem to be human in size. Exactly what is this building anyway? I don't think I've ever thought about it before. It's fairly extravagant. The two rooms on either side of the entrance can only be foyers or servant quarters. They don't really have much going on. This room has got to be either a records room or a study, given the sheer amount of scrolls lying around and the writing desks. There's also a secret stairwell, which the game tips you off on by letting you see it through this little window in the hallway outside. Down them is just a dark and mostly empty room where you find Havel's armor set. I actually would believe that Anor Londo residents would want to have ceiling engravings and decorative pillars in their basement. That seems on brand. Up on the third floor, we've got a couple bedrooms, confirming that people live here, or used to. The decor of the bedrooms includes some Rembrandt paintings, a photo of the Acropolis in Greece, some really nasty-looking wallpaper, and a few very out-of-place pieces of concept art on the walls. Some of them are more believable as paintings, but this one? Come on, guys. You have to at the very least put an oil painting filter over it or something. And somewhat hilariously, it looks like they put this wallpaper up directly over the brick walls. They didn't even plaster. It's no wonder it's peeling so badly. I know this is an extremely nerdy thing to notice, but I believe Anor Londo is the only part of the entire game where you hear this specific footstep sound. Neat, right? Quite inconveniently, the only way to access the second floor is by going across the roof and down the other side of the central staircase. From here, you can access the trophy room and whatever this room is. It's either an altar or a home theater. Looking at the contents of these rooms, I think it's fair to say that this building must be someone's residence. Given the fact that it's connected directly to the main cathedral where the princess's chamber is, I don't think it's a stretch to say that this mansion once housed two of Gwyn's 3 other children. Most likely Gwendolyn and Filianor. And here we are in the main cathedral. It's about damn time. Man, the royal family is really into bread. That baking mural is all over the place in here, too. The main cathedral serves as the central hub of the main Anor Londo castle grounds. It connects the residence and the blacksmith's tower on the west side with the gilded chamber beyond, which is where Ornstein and Smo are posted to guard the chamber of the princess. I was gonna say that I feel bad for the giant blacksmith here sitting on that tiny stool forced to smith all day long, but I think like the other giants we've visited in this episode, he just loves his job. I mean, the door's open. He could leave any time. but he chooses to sit here making his tiny little weapons. You do you, man. Keep on keeping on and all that. Okay, I gotta run some errands real quick before we enter the final leg of this episode. The Ornstein and Smo boss arena is one of the first things I think about when I think back to Anor Londo. Rows of statues lined up on columns. Absolutely massive windows that let golden sunlight streak in over the engraved tiled floors. It's got it all. But the most intriguing thing about this room isn't the fight that occurs here, or the asymmetrical elevators on either side of the space. It's the series of statues at the far end of the chamber. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, dominates the center pedestal, standing dutifully with his hands on the hilt of his greatsword, his sandal-clad feet firmly planted. To his left stands his eldest daughter, Princess Guinevere, her hands clasped demurely in front of her, the noble features of her face stoic and graceful. But the pedestal to his right is empty. There had to have been something there at one point, but not anymore. Until Dark Souls 3, this empty spot was a baffling mystery to the community. I think I remember people thinking that Solaire was Gwyn's son and that the statue was originally supposed to be him, which is funny to think about now. It's been heavily implied that it was supposed to be the Nameless King standing to Gwyn's right here, who is all but confirmed to be Gwyn's firstborn child who was struck from the annals of history for siding with the dragons. Assuming that's true, it makes sense that Gwyn wouldn't want statues of him in his city. I don't know what the loreheads think, or if there's any conflicting opinions propagated by a Vati video with 1,000,000 bajillion views or whatever, but I choose to believe that the statue that was removed from this pedestal still exists. That Gwyn did not succeed in completely erasing it from history. That it is the very same one that can be found slowly crumbling to dust in the sun, all the way down in Undead Burg. How it got there is a complete mystery to me, but hey, it's there, the shoe fits, and it quacks like a duck, too. Here's something that tickles me. Ornstein and Smo have their own little personal lifts. Ornstein's is normal size, but Smo's is extra wide, just like he is. If they really wanted to commit to the bit, they'd have put a mini-fridge back here, too. Why didn't they just build one big lift that they could both use? What is with this his and hers approach? Do they really need their own? My best guess is that one of them threw a fit when they found out they'd have to share. I bet it was Smo, because look at him. Is this the calm and collected visage of someone who likes to share? Up these final stairs beyond these doubled wooden doors lies the ultimate prize. The sweet reward we've earned by triumphing over Undead Burg, Blighttown, Sense Fortress. All of it leads to this. Dude. You can hear the music quietly playing on the other side of the door before you even go in if you move your camera to it. Oh, that kills me. It's like it's on a Bluetooth speaker or something. Okay, here we go. There she is. What we've been fighting for. The scantily clad Princess of Sunlight lounging on a Victorian-era fainting couch. But more importantly, the ability to teleport. So yeah, like everyone else on planet Earth who makes a video featuring Guinevere, I was gonna put a joke about tits here somewhere. But I feel like those jokes have been thoroughly milked at this point, so it would be best not to. The chamber itself is nice and cozy though. You know, for the chamber of the literal Princess of the Sun, you would expect it to be brighter in here. If you know Ball, then you know that the sunlight in Anor Londo is just an illusion anyway, so actually I'm gonna let that slide. I wonder what's in these closets. Do you think she just has a dozen copies of the same outfit like SpongeBob? The doors into the chamber themselves are weird also. It's a solid Celtic-style design. We've got some floral arrangements along the bevels and the classic lions, of course. But why are there knockers on both sides? I think I just physically felt someone dislike the video in real time. It was like a brief sting in my chest. That was weird. No, but seriously, why would she need to knock on the door from the inside? That doesn't make any sense. Anyways, that is pretty much all there is to see up here in Anor Londo. The only thing we haven't been to is Gwendolyn's long-ass hallway, but that fight just annoys me, and Anor Londo looks way better in sunlight anyways, so I won't lose sleep over it. It is a nice area, one of my all-time favorite video game environments. There's something to be said for the sheer wow factor of being dropped into a majestic, sunlit, high fantasy city after footing it through nothing but crumbling ruins up until this point. This game is poetry. And that is gonna be it for the third episode of our Dark Souls Where Are We Now sub-series. I originally wanted to visit a couple more locations for this installment, but both Sen's Fortress and Anor Londo are so dense that they ended up filling out the entire video's runtime quite easily. I sincerely mean this when I say it. I think I discover multiple brand new details every time I make an episode in Dark Souls. It's one of the few games where you can get something new out of it nearly every time you play. There's just so much exploration meat on this particular video game bone. We speculated on a lot here, so I'm going to be very interested in seeing the comments this time. Do you think the statues in Sen's Fortress are guideposts? Were those pillars in the Iron Golem arena supposed to shoot stuff at you? Does Gwyn have an unhealthy fixation on bread making? These questions matter, people. And here's another question. Where do we go next time? From here, the game opens up dramatically, so let me know where you want the series to go next. I'd like to take a moment to thank my amazing supporters on Patreon, who are a big reason that I'm able to put videos like this together in the first place. So thanks, gang. You are heavily appreciated. And thank you all for joining me for yet another slow and steady romp through Lordran. I hope you've enjoyed your stay. Don't forget to kill the channeler before fighting the gaping dragon, and I'll catch you all next time. Alright. See ya.